Super stuff, yeah, great stuff. You just found one. When we were down there, you had lost one, and you were saying nobody leave the room until you could find it.
Yeah, in so many words. I was really upset about it. But I found it later.
Don't you ever worry about moving from one place to the other, or keeping track of all this?
Well, I'll tell you, in the last apartment, I've been in the apartment I'm in presently for 2.5 years now, and I really started setting things up in this apartment, so I haven't had the problem before. I used to have a big box, and I just throw everything in there, but now it'd be difficult if I had to move again.
Have you ever tried to get insurance for your collection?
Yes, I have, but you try telling the insurance companies that a record album is worth $500 to $1,000, and
they won't go for that.
They won't go for that at all. No, it's worth $5 to them, if that.
Right. We have other collective things to show. Among them, a very famous gold record, which.
Yeah, I think it's famous.
Tell us how you got that.
Well, I traded for the gold record. It used to belong. It was presented to Paul McCartney in recognition of sales of over $1 million worth of the Beatles LP Abbey Road, and I don't know how, but somehow it's wandered into my collection.
Right. Can I ask how much it cost you?
Well, it's worth $1,000 or more,
right,
depending on who's willing to pay for it. I myself paid $300 and traded quite a few items for it.
I was reading also in some more of your articles that the Beatles, what was their connection with bonds or something? The United States used them for...
Well, they were connected. I don't think they actually knew that they were being connected with all these items, but their songs were played on records that were issued by United States Savings Bonds and U.S. Marine Corps LPs and Army LPs. These were records that were sent to radio stations that might have had an hour show, dealing with the United States Marine Corps, etc.
It's amazing the impact that they had.
Oh, yeah, they were using them.
At that time, a lot of, shall we say, over 30s, we used to always separate people by the magic age of 30, but a lot of people didn't realize the tremendous impact that this group had. And sometimes I think of the groups out nowadays, and they just don't realize. We always say that, my God, I think we're suddenly getting old, that we say you don't realize the tremendous impact all over the world. It wasn't just English-speaking countries.
Right. You can't compare a modern group. I really don't think you can compare any group nowadays with what the effect the Beatles had on people.
We had you were mentioning earlier a very interesting, speaking of reactions to the Beatles, Bay City Rollers came out to Ottawa not too long ago, and you had a really funny story to tell about that.
Yeah, well, I went down there. I had never experienced the Beatles myself. I'd never gone to any of the concerts back in the old days, and I got dressed up with buttons and my little blow-up dolls, and I went down there with a sign that said "Rollers never, Beatles forever," or something like that. And I went down there and I was chanting my little thing, "Rollers never, Beatles forever." And I came into the airport a lounge area, and all these girls, there were thousands of girls there, and they were screaming, and they thought I was yelling something for the Bay City Rollers.
Right.
When it was the opposite, when I got closer and they saw what I was doing, they turned on me, and I was kicked and punched, and I got out of there with the help of a police officer, and I got knocked down outside, though, again. A group of girls saw me, and they shouted, "There he is, get him!" And they rushed at me, and I turned around, and I got a person in the side of my head. I was knocked on the ground.
Hysteria does some funny things, and speaking of hysteria, we have a film clip from Robie's collection, which we'd like to show you now.
Ardwick, Manchester. The manager makes sure that every member of his staff is ready for the biggest night of the year, able to cope with a terrific audience response evoked everywhere by the Beatles. Paul McCartney gets the full treatment, the kind the fans have taught him to expect. The boys show the press their latest present, They're a natural, these fabulous four, bubbling over with fun, getting as much kick out of entertaining as the fans get from them. Ringo, a fab drummer and always good for a laugh. We're going to have the privilege of filming a small part of the Beatles show as given on the stage of this theatre. It'll be a sample of what millions have heard and seen all over the country. When they come to your town, well, you won't need any further invitation. You'll be there. We show this film by generous permission of their famous manager, Brian Epstein. George Harrison, Ringo Starr. John Lennon, Paul McCartney. Only a few seconds more and the doors will open. While this goes on in the foyer, backstage, the stars themselves make for the dressing room. And just one copper. It's a serious business making up. Ask Paul.
From me to you, I got arms that long to hold you and keep you by my side. I got lips that long to kiss you and keep you satisfied.
Mysterious, right?
You have never had the chance to be at a Beatles concert, have you?
No, that's true.
You were in Chilliwack when they came to Vancouver.
Right, that's about 60 miles from Vancouver, and it was 60 miles from the New Year's concert. And, well, the closest I ever came to a Beatles concert, actual Beatles concert, was when I, they used to have a game on the radio, and they'd pipe in Beatlemania in seven or eight times during the day, and you'd have to be the first one to phone in and answer a skill testing question. You get to see the Beatles. I never did.
We didn't have to go that far in my place. Luckily, we were also in BC, and the Beatles, it was actually almost the last year they toured. It was in Seattle, and we had the pleasure of going down and spotting them. That was the year that John said something that caused a heck of a lot of fans to be angry.
The Antichrist Statement.
What was it that...
Well, he had just said that at that point in time, they were more popular than Jesus Christ, meaning that
Right.
you know, more people were listening to them than they were to Jesus Christ. Nothing...
And that
a harmless
set off,
statement, actually.
Yeah, actually, to us it was a harmless statement, but the effect was something else in America.
Mainly along the Bible Belt,
Right.
Down south. Well, people were crazy,
bonfires and
burning
things like that. Yeah, I remember the concert I went into Seattle. It was there were two concerts. One was a matinee and one was a night show, and there wasn't that much at the afternoon concert. It was more fans, but we were driving from Seattle back into BC and had the radio, of course, tuned on, and the DJs were going on a mile a minute. And there were people with banners and, you know, pickets and the whole schmozzle about that. But it didn't seem to affect them at all. Something like that maybe nowadays would put a major, not necessarily that issue, but something like that could affect, you know, a lot the group in a major way. But it didn't seem to affect the Beatles. They seemed to be above all that.
It would have affected me because they had threats in their life even, you know, which is major.
Right, right. Well, let's get a little bit into the Beatles. We don't have much time left, and if you could just give us a rundown of how it started, how they actually came over to America.
Okay, well, the Beatles have been around. I don't know if too many people know this, but in one form or another, they've been around since 1956. I believe Paul met John in 1956. And they've gone through many changes. It was George, John, and Paul for a while, and then another fellow joined, Pete Best. He was the drummer, and Ringo replaced him on the eve of their success, 1962.
That was not a popular replacement, if I understand correctly.
No, well, not in the Liverpool area. He had a great many fans, Pete Best did, and well, they didn't like Ringo in the beginning, but everyone likes Ringo now.
Why did they replace him? Brian wrote a book, A Cellar Full of Noise, and in it he stated...
Well, I've heard several reasons. One thing being that his drumming just wasn't the Beatles' style, and another thing, I think he was too cute. I think Paul was jealous of Pete Best. I've read that.
Yeah.
You never know.
That's true. There's in many books there's so many different reasons for this, that, and the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
In either case, Pete Best was out. Ringo Starr
was in.
Right. George suffered a black eye because of the replacement. I think at one time they were trying to go into one of these clubs, and they found Brian was mentioning that they found that they had to actually protect with bouncers and the whole schmozzle and
into the cabin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think everything smoothed over in the following months, and I don't know. I've heard I've actually got recordings of Pete Best, and he really wasn't a Beatle. I mean, not the Beatles sound at all. Right.
How did Brian Epstein get hold of and become their manager, and how did the tour start in America?
Well, Brian Epstein used to have a record store in Liverpool, and a fellow came in one day asking for My Bonnie, which was by the Beatles, Tony Sheridan Beatles at that time, 1961, and he didn't have it, and he said he'd check it out and see if he could find it, and he said he'd never heard of them before anyways, and the fellow said, well, they're right here in Liverpool, they're from Liverpool, and they're playing. So Brian went down and saw that they needed some form of management, because they were quite raw back then. I guess maybe what would be called punks now, and things just came about that he managed them. He began to manage them, and well, he was I guess actually quite a good manager, because he did get them a spot in the Ed Sullivan Show, and but they were going for about a year in England, becoming bigger and bigger and bigger before they actually came over to the States.
And he stayed with them actually until his death. We're running out of time, believe it or not. I can't, 30 minutes has just gone by like crazy. But there's two things I want to ask you. Number one, do you think the Beatles will ever get together again as the Beatles?
What can I say?
I myself personally feel no way. They're four individuals, and there's no way they're going to go backwards.
I don't personally feel that they'll get together as the Beatles again. I don't think it would be a permanent thing. Maybe just get together and cut a song, maybe, but
think they'd
not
actually
permanently.
Do that? There I would disagree with you. I think they're just totally four individuals. The fans who, or closet Beatle fans as we call them, who might have found during this 30 minutes that they would like to get in touch with you and they would like to get involved in a fan club, where can they reach you, Robbie?
Well, they can come out of the closet and go to the phone. They can call me at work. It's 238-6311, and at home it's 521-0609, and I'll be happy to talk with them. I don't have any definite plans for a fan club yet, but I'm working on it.
Right.
So.
Great. Super. Thanks for coming down to our studios, bringing in your stuff. And to our closet Beatle fans, get out of the closet and give Robbie a call. You might find you've found an awful lot of different bands coming together and getting back together again.